You bought a fruit tree last spring. You picked the prettiest one at the garden center, the one with the tag that said Patio Fruit Tree in clean letters and a happy little graphic of a pot on a porch. You brought it home. You watered it through summer. You probably brought it inside before the first frost, or wrapped it, or did everything the tag suggested. And 12 months later, you got nothing. A few flowers in May that fell off, maybe a single hard green fruit that never ripened, or just leaves. That story comes up a lot, and almost every time, the problem started before the tree was ever in the cart. The fruit tree section at a garden center looks simple. It is not. Some of those trees will give you real fruit in their first year. Some need 3 or 4. A few are quietly not self-pollinating, no matter what the tag suggests. And some will never produce a real crop in a pot unless you happen to live in the right climate or have a south-facing window all winter. So we are going to walk through 9 fruit trees that actually do work in containers. Real fruit from a pot, with realistic expectations of what year 1, year 2, and year 5 look like, and a clear warning when one tree is not enough for reliable pollination. I will tell you which ones are honestly forgiving. I will tell you which ones are harder than they look. And near the end, I will tell you which trees to walk past if you do not want to wait half a decade for your first taste. Before any of this, 5 things decide whether a fruit tree fruits for you. Your USDA zone, how much direct sun the pot will get, because most fruiting trees want 6 to 8 hours. Whether you have a place to overwinter it if you live somewhere with real cold. Whether the tree needs a pollination partner or can fruit alone. And how much time you are willing to wait. Container growing has real advantages, and they matter. You can move a pot toward sun or away from a late spring frost, or into a garage for winter. You control the soil completely, which is a huge advantage with certain fruits. You can net a small tree in minutes, which is something almost nobody can say about an in-ground tree. But containers have honest limits too. Roots run out of room. Pots dry out fast in heat. Crops are usually smaller than the same tree planted in the ground. And every container fruit tree needs a real plan for winter. Now to the trees. Most fig trees that die in pots are not killed by cold. They are killed by people treating them like indoor plants year-round. Figs are deciduous. They drop their leaves in fall, sleep through winter, and want a real dormancy. The mistake is keeping them on a warm, sunny windowsill all winter, confusing them, exhausting them, and then wondering why they sulk and skip a fruit set the next year. Put a fig in a pot, and most varieties act like the container was their idea. Restrict the roots a little, and the tree responds by shifting energy from chasing more space to producing more fruit. There is a reason figs are one of the most consistently recommended container fruit trees in the country. For varieties, look at 2. Chicago Hardy is the cold-tolerant standard, often grown in containers as far north as Zone 5 or 6 by gardeners who roll the pot into an unheated garage for winter. The top can die back in a hard year, and the tree still rebounds from the roots in spring, because figs fruit on new wood. The other to know is Petite Negra. It is a true dwarf, stays around 4 to 6 feet, and starts fruiting when the tree is barely taller than a houseplant. Both are self-pollinating. A reasonable container size for a fig is 15 to 20 gallons. A light-colored pot is better than black, especially on a hot patio. Full sun, 6 hours minimum, more if you can give it. Water deeply when the top inch of soil is dry. Pull back slightly on water as the fruit starts to soften. It concentrates sugar in the fruit, and that is a trick fig growers have used for a long time. Most people get a small first crop in year 1 or year 2 from a healthy starter tree. A mature container fig in a good year can carry a real harvest, but I would not give you a specific pound number because container yields vary widely by variety, sun, and how cold the winter was. If this is your first fruit tree, a fig is the one I would start with. It is forgiving, it fruits early, and it rewards a single pot. The first thing most people notice about a Meyer lemon tree is not the fruit. It is the smell when it blooms. The flowers carry a citrus scent strong enough that one tree can perfume a whole porch for a week. Some people grow this tree mostly for that, and the fruit is the bonus. Look specifically for the improved Meyer lemon. The word improved matters. The original Meyer carried a virus that could spread to other citrus, which is why nurseries shifted to the improved version. It is virus-free and the one you want. Meyer lemons do something most fruit trees on this list do not. They can carry flowers, developing fruit, and ripe lemons all at the same time. A healthy, mature tree is producing year-round, not in one short season. A 10 to 15 gallon container handles this tree well. Full sun. Citrus likes consistent moisture, but it hates wet feet. Drainage is non-negotiable. A standard citrus or potting mix with extra perlite works. Use a complete slow-release fertilizer during active growth, ideally one labeled for citrus or container fruit trees, and follow the label. Do not start adding Epsom salt or other extras unless you have a real deficiency to correct. Outdoor year-round in zones 9 through 11. Anywhere colder, you move the tree outside from late spring through early fall and bring it inside to the brightest window in the house for winter. South-facing is ideal. With enough light, the tree may keep holding and ripening fruit indoors, but do not expect greenhouse-level production in a normal living room. It may also drop some leaves when you move it. That is normal. Do not panic and overwater. First real harvest typically lands in the second or third year on a 1 or 2 gallon nursery starter, sooner if you buy a larger established tree. Once mature, you are picking lemons constantly through the year. If you want one citrus tree on a porch, this is the one. There is a real catch with pomegranates that almost nobody mentions out loud. The most common dwarf pomegranate sold at garden centers is Punica granatum, the variety called Nana. It is small, beautiful, easy to grow, and it produces tiny ornamental fruit that is mostly seed and not really worth eating. So if a tag just says dwarf pomegranate and nothing else, ask the question, is it Nana or is it a true fruiting cultivar like Wonderful or Parfianka or Salavatsky? For a real edible crop in a pot, you want a fruiting variety that can be kept manageable in a large container. Wonderful is the standard supermarket pomegranate. It will get big, but it can be pruned and grown in a 20 to 25 gallon container with regular shaping. State Fair is more cold hardy than most. Parfianka is loved for flavor and stays a bit more compact. Pomegranates do something that works in our favor. They tolerate drought. They prefer the soil to dry slightly between waterings. They want full sun, the more the better. They are not picky about soil pH. And they are mostly self-fertile, though you usually get a heavier crop with more than one plant. Outdoor year-round in zones 7 through 10. In colder zones, the tree goes deciduous in fall and needs a cool, dark place that stays above the low 20s. An unheated garage works well. A sunny window is fine too, though the tree may want to push new growth, which is not ideal. Time to first fruit on a young grafted tree is typically 2 to 3 years. If you bought a Nana and you are happy with a beautiful, easy ornamental that also gives you small decorative fruit, that is fine. Just buy it knowing what you have. If you live in zone 7 or 8 and you want a citrus that gives you the least amount of trouble in winter, calamondin is the one I would put on your patio. Calamondin is the small, intensely tart citrus you sometimes see on Asian restaurant tables, used like a sour lime. The tree is more cold tolerant than most citrus, often handling brief dips into the high 20s Fahrenheit without serious damage. It can stay outdoors longer in fall and go back outside earlier in spring than a lemon or orange in the same yard. The fruit is the size of a large grape and bright orange when ripe. It is too sour to eat out of hand for most people. What it is one of the best kitchen citrus you can grow. You use it the way you would use a lemon and a lime at the same time. Squeezed over fish, stirred into iced tea, turned into marmalade where the bitterness actually works. The peel is sweet and the juice is tart, which is the opposite of most citrus. A 10 to 15 gallon container, full sun, good drainage. Same general care as any container citrus, self-pollinating. A mature calamondin in a container is dripping with fruit. A young tree can start producing in the first or second year after planting because they bloom easily. They are also tolerant of being moved indoors for winter, more so than many of their citrus cousins. If you have always wanted a citrus tree and you are nervous about the winter side of it, start here. A blueberry plant is technically a shrub, not a tree, but it earns a place on a fruit tree list because it does something almost no real tree does. It lives for decades in a container if you get one thing right. Almost every failed container blueberry I have ever heard about traces back to the same problem. Standard potting mix is roughly neutral, around pH 6.5 to 7. Blueberries want acidic soil, 4.5 to 5.5. Plant a blueberry in regular potting soil and it slowly yellows. The leaves get small and tight, and the plant stops producing. The plant looks like it needs fertilizer, but the real issue is that the roots cannot take up the nutrients that are right there because the pH is wrong. This is also where the container becomes the actual advantage. You can buy a pre-blended azalea, camellia, or rhododendron mix and have the right environment in 5 minutes. That is harder to do in the ground, especially if your native soil is alkaline. Varieties to look for in pots include Top Hat, which stays around 2 feet tall and is a true compact, and Peach Sorbet and Jelly Bean for slightly larger but still small plants. Pick a variety rated for your zone. The range across blueberry types is wide, from zone 3 all the way to zone 10, but each cultivar has a narrower window. 2 plants usually produce more fruit than 1, even with self-fertile varieties. They pollinate each other better. A mature container blueberry gives you a few pounds of fruit per season, which sounds modest until you realize you are eating them by the handful right off the plant. Watch one more thing. Blueberry foliage turns deep crimson in fall. 3 small pots lined up on a porch in October is one of the better ornamental displays you can get from a fruit-producing plant. Now we are in a section where I have to be careful about what I promise. Real peaches from a real tree on a real porch are possible. They are also not always what social media makes them look like. The variety to know is Bonanza. Sometimes labeled Patio peach or miniature peach, it is a genuine dwarf that stays around 4 to 6 feet, self-pollinating, and produces full-sized fruit. There are also Pix Z and El Dorado, which work similarly. Bonanza is rated for roughly USDA zones 6 through 9. It has a relatively low chill hour requirement. Most sources put it at about 250 hours below 45 degrees, which means it works for a lot of warmer climates where other peaches struggle. A few sources cite a higher number closer to 450, So if you are in a borderline area, like the Gulf Coast or Southern California, look up the chill hours for your specific spot before you buy. A 15 to 20 gallon container with good drainage. Full sun. Daily watering during the hot part of summer. A young bonanza usually does not give you a real crop in year 1. The first usable fruit typically comes in year 2 or 3. A mature container bonanza in a good year may give you a couple of dozen fruits. Container peaches almost always produce fewer fruits than the same variety in the ground. That is just how container life works, and pretending otherwise sets you up to feel disappointed. The single thing most people skip on a peach tree is thinning. When the baby fruits first form, the tree usually sets way more than it can ripen well. Remove about half. I know that feels wrong, but the fruits left on the branch get bigger, sweeter, and the tree does not exhaust itself. The honest container advantage with peaches is frost protection. Peach trees bloom early. One hard frost after bloom can wipe out the year's crop on an in-ground tree. A potted tree, you wheel it against the house, into the garage, or under a covered porch, and your harvest survives. You want the fastest tree on this list? This is the one. Some container mulberries fruit in their first year. That is not a typo. A small, healthy, grafted starter can hand you berries the same summer you bring it home if conditions are right. There are 2 varieties to look for in containers. Isai, a Japanese cultivar of white mulberry, and dwarf everbearing, usually a black mulberry type. Both are self-fertile. Both stay small. Both are bred to produce continuously through the warm months instead of in one short flush. Isai tends to produce larger fruit. Dwarf everbearing tends to be slightly more compact. Fresh mulberries are almost impossible to find in American grocery stores because the fruit is too soft to ship well. If you have only ever tasted mulberry in a jam, the fresh version is a different fruit, somewhere between a blackberry and a fig in flavor. A 20 to 25 gallon container, full sun. Mulberries are not fussy about soil pH, and they handle some heat and dry spells once established. They are hardy across a wide zone range. Illinois everbearing, a larger relative, goes down to zone 4, and the dwarfs work well across zones 5 through 9 with winter protection in the colder end. A real warning here: birds love mulberries, more than cherries, more than figs. If you do not net a fruiting mulberry, the birds will strip it. The good news is that netting a 4-foot potted tree takes about 10 minutes. If you are picking one tree on this list because you are tired of waiting for fruit, this is your answer. This is the section where the standard YouTube version of this topic usually quietly misleads you. Columnar apple trees are real, and they really do work in pots. They grow straight up, sometimes 8 to 10 feet tall, and only 1 to 2 feet wide, with short fruiting spurs along the central trunk and very little lateral branching. 2 or 3 of them on a balcony is a small orchard. Here is the part most videos leave out. Most columnar apples need a second variety for proper cross-pollination. The major university and extension sources are consistent on this. Some newer named cultivars are marketed as self-fertile, and they may set a small crop alone, but they fruit much better with a partner. A few traditional columnars, like North Pole and Scarlet Sentinel, are widely sold as cross-pollinating with each other and with regular apple varieties nearby. If you have a neighbor with an apple or crabapple in bloom at the same time, that can also do the job. So before you bring home one columnar apple, ask the nursery one clear question. Will this fruit alone in a pot, or do I need a second variety? If the answer is unclear, Buy 2 different cultivars. They will pollinate each other and stagger your harvest across late summer and fall. A 15 to 20 gallon container per tree. Full sun. Apples are hardy across zones 4 through 8 for most columnar cultivars, with chill hours typically in the 800 to 1,200 range. Check the specific cultivar for your zone. Time to first real fruit is usually 2 to 3 years. Each tree gives you 15 to 30 full-sized apples in a good year once it is mature. The container advantage with apples is real and underrated. You can inspect every inch of a 2-foot wide tree in minutes. You see disease early. You spray accurately if you need to. You catch pest problems before they spread. You probably did not expect olive at the end of a container fruit tree list. Bear with me. The Arboquina olive is one of the most underrated patio trees in the country. It is self-fertile, which is rare in olives. It stays manageable in a 15 to 20 gallon container. The leaves are silvery green year-round. It is evergreen, so no ugly leafless season. And once established, it is one of the most drought-tolerant trees you can put on a porch. Outdoor year-round in zones 8 through 11. In colder zones, container growing is the answer, because olives actually want a period of cool dormancy in winter to set fruit properly. A cool, bright spot, an unheated sunroom, a cool basement window, a barely heated garage with a window provides exactly the dormancy the tree needs. Drag it back out in spring. A few things to be straight about. Olives are slow. First real fruit set is usually 3 to 4 years out, sometimes longer in containers. Yields are modest compared to in-ground trees in olive country. A mature container Arboquina gives you a few pounds of olives in a good year, not a market basket. And fresh olives off the tree are inedible. They are extraordinarily bitter. Almost no one knows this until they bite one. To eat them, you cure them. The simplest method is water curing. Soak them in fresh water, change daily for 2 to 4 weeks. Brine curing in salt water produces a more complex flavor. Both are simple and cost almost nothing. What you really get with an olive tree is the long view. A well-cared-for olive tree can live for centuries, not decades. The tree you start now is going to outlast almost everything else on your porch. The silvery foliage looks intentional 12 months a year. And once it starts producing, it produces more every year as it matures. That is the list. Before we close, 4 trees to walk past at the garden center if your patience is thin. The first is the dwarf avocado, usually sold as wurts or little cado. It is a real dwarf, and it is self-pollinating. The catch is climate. Wurts only handles brief dips to around the high 20s, so unless you live in zones 9 through 11, you are committing to bringing a fairly large tree indoors every winter. Even with good care, the first real crop is usually 3 to 4 years out, and the tree can drop flowers in less than ideal conditions for years before it settles into producing. Possible, not fast, not casual. The second is dwarf banana. People buy these expecting bananas. What they almost always get is a stunning tropical foliage plant that may or may not ever fruit on a porch in the continental United States outside the warmest zones. If you want the look, buy it for the look. If you want fruit, set your expectations very low. The third is full-size sweet cherry. Sweet cherries usually need a second tree for pollination, get large, and are tough to manage in pots. If you want cherries in a container, look at compact tart cherry cultivars like Romeo, Juliet, or Carmine Jewel from the University of Saskatchewan series. Those are self-fertile, cold-hardy, and built for smaller spaces. And the fourth is any standard orange or grapefruit. Most of them are not bred for container life, and they want more heat than a porch in a four-season climate will give them. Meyer lemon, calamondin, and kumquat are the citrus that earn a pot. Treat the rest as in-ground trees for zones 9 and 10. 3 quick things that decide whether your tree lives or sulks. The pot. A black plastic container in summer sun can get dangerously hot inside, especially on concrete or brick. Roots can be stressed before you see anything wrong above the soil. Switch to light-colored containers, terracotta, or fabric grow bags. Drainage holes are non-negotiable. The water. Tap water leaves salts behind in the soil over months. The plant slowly looks worse, and most people respond by adding fertilizer, which makes it worse. Every 4 to 6 months, flush the pot, water heavily until it runs freely out the drainage for a few minutes. That single habit saves trees. The feeding. Do not fertilize a stressed tree. A tree that is yellowing, dropping leaves, or struggling cannot use fertilizer. The salts in the feed can burn already weakened roots. Fertilize when the tree is actively growing and visibly healthy. Stop when it goes dormant. If you are watching this in spring, with garden centers full of starts and 1 weekend free, the trees that pay off the soonest are fig, mulberry, blueberry, pomegranate, and Meyer lemon. A young grafted fig or mulberry can give you fruit the same summer. Blueberry, pomegranate, and Meyer lemon usually take a season or 2, but they are also forgiving. If you are planning for next year, this is the time to think about the apple. Columnar apples are easier to find in fall, easier to plant during cooler weather, and the second variety question is easier to answer when you have a few months to choose carefully. Olives are also better as a planned purchase. A mature, larger tree is worth the extra cost on a tree that lives this long. If you live in Zone 7 or colder, the citrus question is really a winter question. Decide where the tree is going to live from November through March before you bring it home, not after. A bright south-facing window, a sunroom, or a heated garage with a window all work. A dark hallway does not. Pick the tree you are most likely to actually walk past every day. A porch you sit on every evening. A patio you eat on. A driveway corner you pass on the way out. The trees that produce best in containers are the ones their owners notice early. The day a leaf curls. The day the soil pulls back from the side of the pot. The day a fruit starts to soften. If you are buying one tree this year, make it a fig. If you want flowers and fragrance with the fruit, make it a Meyer lemon. If you want speed, make it a mulberry. Everything else on this list is worth the wait, but those 3 reward a first-time container grower the fastest.